We are go. New South Wales go bang. The rampaging Tony on wow. Now Smith. He's redlining it and he is there. He finds a way. There's no one around. Shooting ahead, chasing the bouncing, getting it. Oh, no way, Matty.
Here's Izzy Parisi. Oh, barnstorming run.
Oh, no way, is he going to do it again? He reaches over. Oh, Richie. The bounce is awful. Has he done it? How? Kellaway, he goes in.
Oh, wow. That is a moment. That is a huge moment.
Oh, yeah. They go wide. They get the try. It's O'Connor.
Yes, and there is more of that on its way, bigger and better in 2022. Hello and welcome to the launch of the inaugural season of Harvey Norman Super Rugby Pacific. It's terrific to have your company. I'm McArdle, and today we're going to take you inside the Australian-based teams and check in on their aspirations and preparations as we head towards a brand new era of Super Rugby in Australia, Super Rugby Pacific. It's sneaking up on us. It's less than 2 weeks away now. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and obviously pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Well, joining us today is a woman who's got a massive year coming up on the field. She's kicking goals on the field and off the field over the last couple of years. A big year coming up for her in terms of the Waratahs and the Wallaroos and a Women's World Cup, but also a massive year coming out in front of the camera as well. She's one of my colleagues at Stan Sport. She is an absolute superstar in the making. We say a very good morning to Sera Naiqama. Sera, welcome.
Thank you so much, Nick. I'm so excited that we're finally here on the brink of launching into the Super Rugby Pacific competition.
Amazing year coming up. And you probably, more than a lot of people in the rugby community in Australia, have a real understanding of what Super Rugby Pacific is going to mean for the Pacific region, but also the people in the Pacific, with your Fijian heritage of how much they just love their rugby. What's it going to mean?
In my opinion, I honestly think seeing two teams that are majorly made up of people of Pacific heritage is honestly our ancestors' wildest dreams. You know, we are enabling essentially 60-odd men to have the opportunity to be professional rugby players, which would have not been possible without Fiji and Jura on Moana Pacific. What this also does for our up-and-coming youth is you can look like these players, you can come from the same places as these players, but still achieve the reality of being a professional rugby player. I'm so excited, and I know our community will absolutely show out for these players come round 1, February 18th.
All right, so Harvey Norman Super Rugby Pacific, 5 Australian teams, 5 Kiwi teams, and as you say, 2 teams from the Pacific with the Fijian and Drua. Yes. And also Moana Pacifica. Take us through it. Just show us what is in store and what the fans can look forward to.
Yes, the Harvey Norman Super Rugby competition will see, the Super Rugby Pacific competition will see 12 teams. That's 6 teams that are based here in Australia and 6 teams also based in New Zealand. What we'll see is in the opening 8 rounds, each side will compete on their side of the Tasman. We'll also see over 18 weeks, 91 matches played. But what I'm most looking forward to is round 10. All 12 teams will head down to Melbourne for the Super Round, and it's going to be an absolute blockbuster event because all fans will be able to get around their team in the one venue.
Indeed, and of course you will see every moment of that right here on Stan Sport. We can't wait to get started, and today we're going to hear from a lot of stakeholders and people close to this competition, people who've been involved in the creation of this competition and what's in store.
Yes, joining us for today's launch is Rugby Australia's CEO Andy Marinos, Stan Director of Sport Ben Kimber, our colleague Andrew Mertens, and we also have a special interview with a friend across the ditch. But to get us started, I'd like to welcome CEO Andy Marinos to kind of take us through this inaugural season of the Super Rugby Pacific competition. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here. No, we're very excited. It's been a lot of hard work. Really, when we look back to 2020 when everything sort of shut down on us and we were grappling what is the next iteration of Super Rugby going to look like. Obviously, it's a big departure not having South Africa and Argentina playing at this point, but you know, it is a fantastic opportunity now to really grow rugby in the Pacific, and also for us as we're all preparing, both men and women, for World Cups and higher honours, you know, you want to be playing in the best possible competition. We saw last year was really a really good comp for us. It really launched our association with our broadcast partners, Stan and Nine. And so now we're looking forward to a much more intense competition with the Kiwis and these two new teams from the Pacific.
And today there's some breaking news, and I imagine as an organisation, Rugby Australia, you're pretty happy with the news with Harvey Norman coming on board. That's huge.
Nick, absolutely. You know, and full credit to Katie and her team and Sam and all those that have been working on it, along with my commercial side. They're just fantastic supporters. You know, they came in last year and really threw their weight behind our Super Rugby AU comp. And to have them locked and loaded now for this inaugural season is really significant and huge for us. And, you know, I think it's fantastic we can start the season off as the new Harvey Norman Super Rugby Pacific comp here in Australia.
It's sensational news. The fans are the lifeblood of our great game. What can they expect from the Harvey Norman Super Rugby Pacific competition this season?
Well, I think with the addition of the two new teams, I think they're going to bring a huge amount of creativity and intensity and certainly free-flowing rugby. So I think that's going to be something that the fans can look forward to. And I think from the Aussie side, the guys are certainly going to want to build on what was a really successful Super AU last year. I'm really excited and looking forward to seeing, you know, the Noah and Fraser McWright and one of the other players, his name escapes me now, but just they've had Wilson. They've had an extended break over the international period. Really looking forward to seeing how they're going to come back and integrate into Super Rugby, and just to see how we're going to pit ourselves against the Kiwis, because the end of year tour throw out a few questions for both Australia and New Zealand. It's going to be good to see how the guys settle in this year.
What about the relationship, the two new teams coming in? And Rugby Australia has a special relationship, but also a responsibility, I guess, to the Pacific region. And this new competition is a nod, in a sense, to that relationship and responsibility.
Absolutely. I mean, we've always, as Australia, really had quite a close association with our Pacific friends. You know, having the Druid team based here in Australia for us is going to be really important to continue to build on that friendship and that relationship. We've seen it through the sevens and now obviously into the 15s. And I think when you look at the composition of the Super AU, the Australian franchises already, there's a lot of Pacific talent in there. So it's a bit of a homecoming, I think, for some of those Fijian players. And we're really looking forward to it. I'm sure the fans are too.
I definitely am looking forward to it. There are a number of rounds this year that are themed. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? We see Super Round taking place in round 10. We have Anzac Round, Heritage Round. Could you tell us a little bit more of what we can expect from those?
We've actually got 4 themed rounds this year, which is really exciting. You know, we've got a cultural round, which is really just going to celebrate the cultural diversity that we have within Australia, New Zealand, and across the Pacific. And that's really a wonderful opportunity for the community and the players just to sort of identify and get behind their various cultures, and we embrace it. As a game, we've got the Heritage Round, which is really just looking back at the rich history and tradition that we've got here in Australia, especially with New South Wales and Queensland, and now with the more newly established franchises in the Force and the Rebels, and obviously the ACT's got a long tradition and history in professional rugby. So we're going to celebrate that. We've got the Women's Round, which is really a very unique opportunity where we can just celebrate women in rugby, not only for the girls that are playing, and it's a fantastic year this year for them with Com Games and the Women's World Cup, celebrate the women in the game, but also the moms and the volunteers and all the people that put in so much work behind the scenes. And then, as we said, we've got the Super Round, which is going to culminate on the Anzac weekend, and that's just really going to be a festival of rugby in Melbourne, where I'm just looking forward to seeing how the crowd are going to engage with that, but more importantly, what the outcome is going to be.
Absolutely. And so much of your working life has obviously been spent in rugby, but you don't often get a chance to be on the ground floor of something like Super Rugby Pacific. What are you looking most forward to?
I'm really just looking forward to the diversity of styles and play that we're going to have here, and really how we can, in this country, just continue to grow the game amongst our fans, and start creating those genuine aspirational pathways for the young talent that we want to see coming through. Because when you look at rugby in Australia over the next 10 years, it's got a really beautiful horizon with a lot of major events coming through, and I think that's something we've got to look forward to and celebrate.
I agree. It's not just a big year for the Harvey Norman Super Rugby competition, it's a huge year for fans of Aussie rugby as well.
It is, from Super Rugby Pacific, we've got the Super W competition, and we're really keen to see how the girls are going to go and put themselves out as they prepare for the World Cup. You know, we've got the Women's World Cup, we've got the Women's Pacific Four Nations series that's going to be taking place. And then we've obviously got the England series, you know. We saw that kick-off on the weekend. It was an interesting outcome with Scotland tipping England, and unfortunately my old team got a bit of a pasting against Ireland. But, you know, so there's a lot of great international rugby that we can look forward to, and we've got Commonwealth Games, and then obviously the end-of-year tour. So there's a lot of rugby ahead of us, and not to miss out on the Shoot Shield and the Hospital Cup, which is really the mainstay and the pillar of the game, and that's where the next generation of talent is going to come from.
Andy, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Andy Marinos there, the CEO of Rugby Australia. Of course, it is a huge year. It kicks off with Super Rugby Pacific. You will see every moment of all 91 matches live, ad-free and on demand on Stan Sport.
The countdown's over.
For the first time ever,
And there's the first try.
Australia, New Zealand and the Pacific Islands compete in the Super Rugby Pacific competition.
Looking real good.
The only place to watch every match,
Unbelievable.
ad-free, live and on demand.
The rampaging Tony Allen
Super Rugby Pacific kicks off February 18 on the home of rugby, Stan Sport.
I'm joined now by Stan Sport. Sorry, my apologies. I'm joined now by the Stan Sport director, Ben Kimber. Ben, welcome. I'm very well, thank you. This is a huge year for the Harvey Norman Super Rugby Pacific competition. From a broadcaster's perspective, what are you most looking forward to?
Look, it's fantastic to be able to step up into something new in year two. I think we had a great year in year one. Rugby Australia as a partner were awesome, and we delivered something the fans loved. We saw that in our numbers, our customers, the feedback we got. And in year two now to see a new competition which brings, obviously, you know, the best in the world in New Zealand against, you know, Australian rugby in the one competition, I think is something we've been looking for a while. I think it'll be fantastic.
I'm really looking forward to it. You're speaking about year one, but what can we expect differently in year two?
Well, I think first and foremost, we're going to see a competition where the two different countries go head-to-head all the way through as best they can. But for us specifically, we're going to be looking to do more. In year one, we brought a brand new brush to the broadcast. We saw the customers and the fans really appreciate that. And we're going to do more of the same. We're going to add to that. We're going to bring some more shows out. We're going to bring some more angles to the way we cover it. And we're going to make sure that rugby fans can see behind the scenes what goes on, as well as all the great rugby that happens on the park.
Speaking about all the stuff that happens off the field, we know for international rugby, this is a huge year that's coming up. What can Stan fans expect?
Well, I think what you've also seen over the past year is Stan has continued to add to the rugby portfolio. Rugby fans are hugely passionate. They're going to love Super Rugby Pacific, and we've been giving them more and more of what they're after as well. We get all of the competitions out of New Zealand and South Africa as part of our Sanzar deal, but we've also added plenty of rugby around the world. We've had the Japan Rugby League One. We've had the Premiership out of the UK, and right now we've got the Six Nations, of course, which launched with the games over the weekend, and we saw awesome rugby there. So really what we have is a fantastic portfolio, and Super Rugby Pacific really underpins that for us with a great partner.
Well, thank you so much, Ben, for your time. All of that action will begin on February 18th in round one, where we see Moana Pacifica take on Auckland Blues, and we also see the Waratahs take on Fiji and Drua here in Sydney.
Are you ready? You better get ready. Time to feel the power. The power of the Pacific. A new era of rugby kicks off February 18.
Now joining us to talk about our friends across the ditch, what's going to happen in Kiwi rugby this year is, well, he's one of the All Blacks' greatest players. He's made his home now in Sydney. He is one of the sharpest brains in the game and probably the sharpest wit in the game as well. He's a colleague of mine on Stan Sport. Andrew Mertens, welcome.
Hi, Nick. That's quite some introduction. I don't know why Sera has passed up the opportunity to come and have a chat. Feels like Wasp Central, but anyway, let's climb into it and talk about our favourite New Zealand teams.
All right, so take us through it. I want to start with the two new Pacific teams first, before we get to the traditional Kiwi teams. But obviously, you've played so much rugby over your time with some of the greatest players from the Pacific in the history of the game. What does it mean to you to see these two teams?
Oh, I'm really excited. I'm excited that the Pacific Rugby supporters have got direct representation now rather than, you know, the proxy representation they've had previously. At the Crusaders, we were very lucky to get huge amounts of support from the Pacific, partly due to, you know, using the likes of Afato So'oalo or Marika Vunimbaka over the years. We had great support, but for the people in the Pacific to get that direct representation, I think is absolutely fantastic. It's not just about broadening the opportunities for Pacifica players without having to go to New Zealand and Australian franchises. It's just about the people getting in behind it, and it's really exciting. And it gives a vehicle to what we know are Pacific rugby strengths, you know, the dynamism, the infectious enthusiasm, the sense of fun. And so I'm hoping we're seeing that in spades this year from these two teams.
See plenty of that, I reckon. It's going to be absolutely awesome. Your Crusaders, obviously, they've been the benchmark in New Zealand for a lot of years now, the most successful team in the history of Super Rugby. But we've seen huge improvement last year from the Blues. Chiefs came good late. The Highlanders were finalists in Super Rugby Trans-Tasman, and you can guess that the Hurricanes are going to bounce back as well. So how do you see all of that playing out? Take your Crusaders hat off for the moment. You see any big movers?
Well, I just think it's a really tough competition. I think it's really exciting. You know, Crusaders, we know they're a good organisation. They're pretty slick across the board. They don't make too many mistakes. You look at the Blues, they've got the abundance of talent up there, particularly in the back line when you pair up the likes of Rico Ioane with Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. A lot of interest in him, of course. Caleb Clark coming back from his, you know, Sevens focus last year in 2021. And then you go to the Chiefs, who the traditional strength, the hallmark of their game has just been that toughness, that grittiness. So they've all got slightly different styles within what Kiwi teams tend to play, and it's just really exciting. We saw last year in the Trans-Tasman competition that the Crusaders missed out on the final just through the points for and against, and it's a real sprint, this competition. So, you know, while the Kiwi teams want to attack, want to use the ball, I think they're going to have to be a little more circumspect this year because they don't want to give up, you know, they don't want to have loose moments. And I think the Australian teams came up last year. They will have got a lot of encouragement from the way they went against the New Zealand teams, where we might have thought it was going to be a complete walkover. I think there were some really, really good games there. So I think they'll fancy themselves, the Australian teams, against these New Zealand sides, and I think we're going to see a lot more even competition.
All of that to play out a little bit later in the season. I want to just have a sharp look or a closer look at Moana Pacifica. So Aaron Major, coach, and you obviously played a lot of rugby with him. Sekope Kepu, we've seen, has been named captain. And from the glimpses we've seen, there's a really nice culture already building. What can we expect from Moana Pacifica? First up.
Well, I think we've got to have reasonable expectations, and I think that's not setting high expectations in terms of results. I think Aaron Major will be just setting, you know, goals around the cohesion within the team, the understanding. He's bringing together, you know, a lot of different players. They might have a common cultural theme, but a lot of them won't have played together. And they're up against established franchises with established processes and pathways and understanding amongst their players. And we know that's so important, the combinations in Super Rugby, because it's a blowtorch that really gets applied to a team, and any cracks in the communication or the understanding really get shown up. So, you know, like I say, I don't think we need to have high expectations. I want to see them enjoy themselves. I want to see them be able to bring their skill set, bring their strengths to the game, and just give it a crack. And it's something to build for the future. But like I say, let's have some realistic expectations. And, you know, Aaron Major will be setting you know, goals for the players in terms of their own performances, but I think let's take the results out of it and just enjoy seeing these guys in the competition.
And just finally, I know you're in hard training ahead of a big season in front of the camera. What are you most looking forward to on Stan Sport this year?
Well, it's going to be tough. It really is a marathon for us, isn't it? You know, if the players think it's getting tougher and tougher every year, they're starting earlier, they're training harder. What about us? You know, people at home as well. There are 6 games to digest in Super Rugby this year rather than the 4 that we've had each weekend from the last couple of weeks. We've got marathon sessions going on in the studio. And, you know, people might think, oh, that's tough to get through 5 or 6 hours. It is. But the exciting thing about it is you've got 3 games at times to watch while you're sitting in the studio, sitting there with a few sweets. You know, Alana Ferguson normally brings along a few nibbles and stuff like that. I've got to try and avoid that as much as I can. But it is a tough, grueling marathon. I'm really looking forward to it because, you know, your heart rate gets up for all these games and stays up for a long period of time. It doesn't reflect in my current shape, but I'm certainly looking forward to it.
You're right about Alana. Worst diet I've ever seen. She's unbelievable. Thanks for joining us today.
Cheers, Nick.
All right, Andrew Mertens and his view on what's going to happen across the ditch. Now, let's get across what's going to happen here in Australia, and we are going to begin with the defending Super Rugby AU champions, the reigning Super Rugby AU champions, the Queensland Reds.
I'm joined now by the Queensland Reds General Manager of Rugby, Sam Cordingling, and one of their captains, Liam Wright. Good morning, gents.
Morning. Morning, Sera.
Liam, I want to start with you. The Reds had their first trial match against the Western Force on the weekend and unfortunately lost. Now, we know that trial matches are no guide for the season, but what were some of the key learnings for your team?
Yeah, it was firstly it was just good to get a hit out. Obviously, we wanted to get into winning habits, and so losing that was disappointing. But we think the basics were there, and there were some real positive aspects coming out of that. You could see our system starting to come through, and probably most pleasingly was the young guys that stepped up. We obviously had a few late withdrawals and things, and just young guys stood up and got the first chance to taste the jersey, and were really impressive. So I think that's really pleasing that we could put out two fairly competitive sides there, and unfortunate not to come away with a win, but we're happy with our system showing through.
Pleased to hear. Sam, your men are currently the Super Rugby AU champions. What has your management team done to enable your men to take it one step further throughout the 2022 season?
Yeah, I think we've had a good lead in, a really solid preparation. It's obviously been probably months in the making. Not a lot of football at the back end of the year last year, but a really strong period to prepare. Obviously had a few Wallaby players come back that we thought would have been part of the tour, but we're fortunate enough to have them back throughout the pre-season. Guys like Liam, obviously Fraser and Wilso were back preparing with us for most of the season. Now we had that ability to build a bit more cohesion, had a strong preparation in terms of availability in players. Our medical staff and physio staff do a great job there in keeping our players fit. So up until last week, we've had a little bit of COVID impact. We've had some good stability and a nice solid pre-season leading in. But I imagine that's pretty consistent across the board. But the one thing I'd say that we have got on our side as well is about 95% retention rate in terms of the players. So good cohesion leading to the season, which we're looking forward to build upon.
That's an impressive stat. I just want to talk about that moment where you said the Wallabies were able to rejoin you at the front of pre-season. How has the overall team been able to benefit from that?
Well, I think it's just the obvious one is just their level of experience. We're probably leading into the season, 8 of our players are now 50 cap plus players, which is fantastic. It's a target for us to obviously retain a lot of our guys. They bring a hell of a lot of experience now, and obviously that test football that they have had exposure to as still young men has been terrific for the younger guys coming through. And as Liam said on the weekend, we saw some outstanding performances from players like Tom Liner in his first game for Queensland. I was sitting next to Cameron Lillycrap on the weekend, and he was just reflecting upon his father playing at the same venue. Obviously all those years ago. Floyd Aubrey, who's another young man who stepped up from our academy through the pre-season and has been outstanding. So there's some real positives there, and the influence that those Wallabies have, our senior players have on those players is invaluable.
Love it. Liam, no doubt you guys are heading into this season with the target on your backs. How do you and your players plan to approach that?
Yeah, well, obviously we got the job done in the Super Rugby AU, which is really pleasing, and we know a lot of the Aussie teams will be coming back for another crack at that against us. So we've got a whole new competition, and unfortunately, again, at the end of last year, we got a bit of a reality check against the Kiwi team. So I think there's a lot to work on, and which we had a really good preseason to do and build on those things that we began last year, but unfortunately didn't show up in the season. So the players are to keep going forward and moving on. We aren't happy with just beating Aussie teams. We want to go and compete against everyone, and having the teams and the drill will be really exciting as well. So the boys are just keen to play at this point, and we've got another trial this week against the Tars, which will be great, and continue to show what we've been building in pre-season, which is just a bit of physicality and simplicity in what we're doing, but hopefully some consistency.
Love it. And last one for you, Liam. As you head into this season, we know that the Queensland Reds have emerged some great and exciting young talent, and Sam touched on it a little bit, but who are you most looking forward to seeing just have an outbreak season?
Yeah, we've got a lot of guys who've come through this pre-season and got stronger, faster, better, smarter, everything you could ask from a really, really long pre-season. So, as Sam mentioned before, I thought Tom Liner was seriously impressive on the weekend. He just stepped up and commanded that role at 10, which is all we asked him to do, and he put his body on the line when he needed to for a young guy, and his kicking game is extraordinary as well. So, some other guys that we're looking forward to seeing is hopefully Lawson Crichton getting some game time this year. He was really close at the end of last year to making his debut, and unfortunately a run of injuries has stopped that. But again, I think he's a really impressive game manager coming through. So, guys like Spencer Jeans and Kalani as well, and our halfbacks have been just tussling away all pre-season and have been great, working hard, pretty much always the last off the field. So some great guys there. But I'd say Floyd Aubrey as well, like Sam mentioned. He's come in, taken opportunities, and just keeps working hard with his head down. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him in there at some point as well.
It sounds like you have a really strong pipeline coming through, and if your 2021 season was anything to go by, we know that the Queensland Reds are in good stead for another strong campaign. Gents, thank you so much for your time this morning, and we look forward to seeing you hit it in round 1.
Pleasure. Thanks.
We'll now head over to Daceyville, where we'll talk with the New South Wales Waratahs.
Well, the Waratahs captain is Jake Gordon. Their new coach is Darren Coleman. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Hey, Darren, it's been a whirlwind for you, mate. You're over in the US, you get the job, you come back, you have to bring the group together. How have you done that? And, let's not beat around the bush. It's probably a group with some scars off the back of last year. What have you done to bring them together so quickly?
Yeah, it's been as you say, it's been a whirlwind. Enjoyed it. Yeah, good bunch of guys here. They're probably one of the things I noticed most was how tight they were and how positive they were on the back of what would have been a really challenging season for them. Usually when things aren't going well for a team, there's a few cancers and blokes are into each other, but the group's really tight, and I guess I've just sort of helped facilitate that and give them a bit of belief, and obviously having a trial win last week against Canberra was great for that. So just helping the boys sort of understand that they are good players, and we just need a bit of luck and a good run with a consistent crew to get there.
Well, everything we hear coming out of Daceyville is that everyone is loving the opportunity to work under you. Jake, the word reset, or the phrase reset, we hear that a bit as well. Take us into that. Is that a theme? What does that actually mean?
Look, I think, interesting. I think having Darren come in, who's got a different knowledge to rugby, has a great balance between, I guess, when to put an arm around someone and probably when to get into them a little bit. Reset for me, I think, is, if we're being completely honest, forgetting about last year. We've had 2 trials to start the year and put on a pretty good performance in both, but majority trying to forget on last year and try and improve this year.
All right, Darren, this one's for you. The heritage that you have in Shoot Shield and grassroots in general. How do you harness that? Because one of the criticisms over the years is maybe that the Waratahs haven't done that as well as they could. You're the perfect guy to do that. How do you go about that?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. Yeah, definitely haven't come through the ranks, and I've definitely done the time to do that. What I am finding already quite difficult, it is hard to serve all masters and to keep everyone happy. There's no doubt about that. But hopefully, I guess the New South Wales rugby public, it's a big animal. I I just want them to give us a chance. Like if we come out in the first few rounds and the blokes aren't performing or they're not putting their body on the line, then yeah, they can maybe slip the slipper in. But otherwise, yeah, give the boys a chance. As long as we're playing with passion and we're defending hard and staying in contest, then I think New South Wales Rugby Public will get behind us. And the boys in here, they are all grassroots guys themselves. They've all come through those clubs. They're not rock stars. They want to give back to the game, and they're not on no pedestal. When they get an opportunity, they're back playing for their shoot shield clubs, and they know where they're from. So I don't think I have to change too much. Just be who you are and appreciate and respect where you're from and be open, and we'll all get on fine.
It seems like there is a lot of reason for the New South Wales Rugby Public to believe and to get on board. And part of that is the reintroduction of some vast experience, really. And Jake, in terms of that experience coming into the team, it's going to help you as captain. You've got Michael Hooper, who'll be back at some stage throughout the season. Jed Holloway coming back as well. And Jamie Roberts coming from Europe, obviously a star with Wales over the years. How important is that for you personally and for the team?
Yeah, I think that's very important. Last year we were unlucky not to have Michael around, and I think we're going to get him back in roughly 6 or so weeks. But a guy with the amount of knowledge and experience he has, it'd be ignorant of me not to lean on guys like that. And now we have a guy like Jamie Roberts stepping in, who's played 96 games for his country, also with a wealth of knowledge. And you've got the likes of Jed and then coming back into the fold. And, like I touched on a little bit earlier, guys with that sort of experience and knowledge, I can't wait to tap into their brand and see what they've got to offer.
Hey guys, thanks very much for joining us. As I said, there is a lot of reason for New South Wales supporters to believe, and I think there's a lot of buzz about what you can do this year. Terrific to have you on board today.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
All right, and of course, when the Waratahs are healthy, so too is Australian rugby, and we look forward to the Waratahs getting back on track in 2022. Next up, can't wait to see these guys in action. The new team from Fiji, the Fijian Ndrua, and really their name symbolises their journey. Let's get to know the Fijian Ndrua.
Ndrua is the biggest object of Fijian culture. You must remember, without Ndrua, there's no human being in Fiji. Only the plants and trees and the coconuts. Our forefathers brought us here 3,500 years ago. And they named this ocean Moana. Moana means you go where the bow of your canoe takes you. Nowadays, they're known as Pacific Ocean.
And you look at the structure of it, you look at how they put it together, going back hundreds of years, how it is able to survive the rough oceans out there. That takes a lot of planning, a lot of wisdom and intelligence. So now you have the opportunity to learn from those lessons, translate it into how you prepare and perform on a rugby field. The principles are the same. So I guess that's something that, forms the identity of this team. How we can look at it is bringing back that name of the Ndrua connects us to our origins, our identity, and who we are as a people.
Joining us live now from Lennox Head is Fiji Ndrua head coach Mick Byrne and his captain Nemani Nungasak. Yanja family?
Yandra.
Nemani, firstly, congratulations on your appointment as captain of the Fiji Ndrua. This is a huge achievement, particularly for our people back home. What do you think it means to them to have Fiji represented in the inaugural season of the Harvey Norman Super Rugby Pacific competition?
Yeah, I think it's a huge moment for Fiji rugby. It's been a proud rugby loving nation. It means a lot to me growing up personally, as a kid, watching Super Rugby and dreaming to one day represent one of the teams in Super Rugby, and now to be able to do that and captain the side as well it means a lot, and I know it will mean a lot to the people back at home and to young players growing up back in Fiji. It'll be something they look forward to in the future when they are in their rugby careers. Yeah.
No doubt you'll be inspiring a lot of young Fijians back home. Mick, Fiji and Draw being one of the newest teams in the competition also makes them one of the youngest too. Do you believe your experience with working with Australian teams in the past puts you in good stead to coach them throughout this inaugural season?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of energy here and a lot of enthusiasm for the game, and just the ability to be able to get with them and help them understand themselves and their game. I think the big one for me is to make sure that they all keep that enthusiasm, play the game with the spirit they have, and to not stifle any players here by trying to overcoach or overmanage. And I think so far the energy these guys have shown to get stuck in has been awesome.
I could imagine it being really loud and a lot of laughing too in your camp, which will be to envy, I think, for a lot of us. Now, Mani, Fijians are known for playing a running brand of rugby. Do we expect Fiji and Draw to play a similar style this year?
Yes, of course. There's lots of young talent in our squad. Really exciting talents from Fiji, New Zealand, and a few boys here in Australia. You expect the rugby to be exciting. Boys are ready to go, and I'm excited as well to see them go on the first round 2 weeks.
It's really exciting. Mick, you have a couple of Olympic gold medalists in your squad, and you have boys that have come from all over the world to be able to join Fiji and Draw in their inaugural season. How would you describe the squad that you have?
Well, I think it's highly exciting. We had an intra-club last week, and the way they got stuck into each other was, I suppose, impressive from the coach, but a bit scary at times as well. So I think the boys are really up for what's going on. I think the guys that have had a little bit of... We've only got 2 players here that have had professional rugby experience, but the Olympians certainly have helped us understand the sacrifices you need to make when you're in a bubble and when you're away from home, and how you can best prepare. So, our peer group leadership there has been awesome to hear those guys and what they had to do to go away and win an Olympic gold medal, and we're just trying to grab hold of some of that energy and bring it into the Bruin team here.
Now, Mani, you've all been in Lennox Heads now for a couple of months. How have you maintained your connection to home?
Well, this video chats with the people back at home has been the only form of connection we have right now. Hopefully, we have a game there in the 5th or 6th round. Then we get to meet our families back at home. But right now, it's just been video chats and just that.
Noted. Well, it's been great to catch up with you both. Vinaka level for your time, and we look forward to seeing you take on the New South Wales Waratahs in round 1.
Okay.
We'll now head down south to meet with the ACT Brumbies.
Let's catch up with the Brumbies now. Their captain is Alan Alalatoa and their coach is Dan McKellar. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
G'day, Nick.
Good to catch up. Dan, your last year at the helm of the Brumbies, so I'm going to start this question to Alan. Al, does it give you a bit more motivation, send the boss out in the right fashion?
Yeah, it does, Nick. Dan's played a big part of this club. He's been here since I first started, which is close to 9 years. So it's something that as a playing group we have to remind ourselves of, throughout the season. And I'm sure that the boys will definitely be motivated to be better than last year for the big man next to me.
Good stuff. Dan, you just missed out in the Super Rugby AU final last year and kind of probably didn't get the results that you really wanted in the Trans-Tasman competition. You're a master at making all these little tweaks. The game develops at the Brumbies year after year. What can we expect this year that's just a little bit different?
Oh, look, I think we, you hit the nail on the head there. We, obviously lost the AU final and then went into that Trans-Tasman competition pretty battered. I think all teams will be chasing a little bit of luck in and around the injury front. But like every year, Nick, we've reviewed the season thoroughly. We've got a different approach to how we train this year. In short, it's more about quality and intensity as compared to quantity, I suppose. And look, in terms of how we, what tweaks or changes we make to our game, there'll be some subtle changes that we'll make. I think, all the best teams in the world have balance and are capable of doing all the major components of the game well, and that's something that we'll be chasing.
Al, year after year, the Brumbies seem to have players that Australian rugby needs to develop as well, not just for you guys, but for the sake of the game at a national level. Noah Lolosio is one of those players. He's got some experience under his belt now. What do you expect from Noah in 2022?
He's been huge for us, Nick. I think what we expect of him this year is to be our leader, our driver on the field. He's constantly talking about our attack and how it can grow, not only in the sessions but here in the meetings as well. And I think him being a number 10 over the last couple of years is only going to be good, for us this year. So I think that experience he had last year and the year before has been awesome. And I think that just seeing him in the way that he's, started this year off has been great. And I'm just looking to see him step into more of a leadership role for our team.
So he's one player that's come through over the last couple of years. And Dan, like so many Brumbies coaches before you, you've had this knack of developing young players. Just give us a bit of a window, a bit of an insight into who we can look out for this year. A young guy that maybe not many people are talking about who's going to make a name for himself this year.
Yeah, there's a number of them, Nick. I think, when I first got back in early January, I was certainly impressed with a core group of young players that brought into the organisation, and you can tell from early days that they're going to be around the Brumbies for a long time to come. I think a couple of years ago, we were fortunate enough to pick up Billy Pollard and Tommy Hooper, who were a part of that Australian under-18s team that beat New Zealand. They've been in and around our program now for a number of years, and they're just starting to find their feet, feel really comfortable at Super Rugby level. They've both been excellent over the course of the pre-season, and they're a couple of players that'll get more game time without a doubt in 2022. And then more established players as well, like the Lonergan brothers didn't tour, had a pre-season to help develop them and set them up for the future, and they're in a really good position as well to kick on and play a more senior role throughout our group in 2022. So, yeah, plenty to like at this stage of the season, but all the challenges are ahead of us.
And Al, just to finish with, the Brumbies are the most successful Australian Super Rugby team throughout the history of the competition. You do demand excellence, I know that, as an organisation. What are your expectations this year? Is it winning and nothing else, or does something else feed into what you'd like to achieve this year?
I think what we've spoken about throughout January is being better than we were last year. And I think, as Dan touched on before, the coaching staff and the playing group reviewed thoroughly on last year and how we can grow in that aspect. And I think what we saw was that we were pretty far off in comparison to the New Zealand team. So we've altered that at training. It's been a good January block so far, and I think for us we just need to apply that week in, week out, so we can get the wins on the board and put us in good stead for this year.
Good stuff, gents. Thanks for spending some time with us today, and all the best for the 2022 season.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
No problems. Looking forward to catching up with those two throughout the season. Let's now catch up with a man who made his career at the Brumbies, so much a part of the Brumbies fabric. He's been away for a couple of years and now back in Super Rugby, but he will be one of the stars for Moana Pacifica. I'm talking about Christian Lealiifano.
I guess what draws me back is how hard it is. I feel like it's probably one of the most elite domestic competitions in the world. Adding Fiji and Jura and Moana Pacifica in it is going to be exciting. Yeah, going to be real tough footy and help grow the code in both countries and hopefully strengthen our Pacific teams as well.
There's a youngster to keep an eye on, Christian Lealiifano, the number 10 jersey worn for so long by Stephen Larkin. There's
Christian Lealiifano!
With a lot of teammates in the Australian team, I guess my feelings are excitement that I'll get to see them, and then a little bit of angst that I know the quality that they'll bring and the challenges that they'll bring to test us. To represent my Samoan heritage, it's really, really special to me. Obviously growing up in Australia and knowing the sacrifices that my family made to give me, I guess, a better opportunity. This is my opportunity to give back, and I just really want to represent them and make them really proud. People can expect us to be passionate, we're a passionate group and really a team that wants to represent our people and our heritage, our cultures, our ancestors, all those things that are meaningful to us as Pacifica. So each player involved is dedicated to doing that. I think we're more than a rugby team. We're really passionate about taking the game to helping the islands and the next generation of Pacifica people to want to strive to play for a Super Rugby franchise and then eventually on for their home nations.
Joining me now is Melbourne Rebels head coach Kevin Floyd and back row McArdle. Good morning.
Thanks. Good morning.
Kevin, this is your first full season as head coach. How have you settled into your new role?
I'd say it's been actually really good. The boys have trained hard. We've been together for a while now. It's been a long pre-season, but it's been awesome and got a great leadership group around me and great staff. So really been enjoying my time.
Michael, the 2022 season is really coming close. How has preparations throughout pre-season been travelling?
It's good. Obviously, we started back in October, so we've had definitely a long haul prep, which allowed us to really structure our pre-season, work through basics, then build and work on our belonging piece with being culturally part of the group and invested in the group. So it's been structured really well and the boys have worked pretty hard.
Kevin, you have your first trial against Fiji and Jura this Thursday. They're one of the new exciting sides being added to the Harvey Norman Super Rugby Pacific competition. What is your perspective on this team and how do you intend for your boys to kind of undo their game plan?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome that Fiji are the Jura now back in. Played against them a couple of times in our C level, so we know what to expect from them. Obviously, if it gets loose, they get really excited and we want to play our sort of brand of rugby, which is going to be a fast brand, but we also want to make sure we're in control of that. So it's also a good opportunity for a big squad to come out and perform. So we'll be looking at some of our young guns coming through and delivering for us on Thursday.
It's set to be a really exciting matchup. Michael, if we look at the current Melbourne Rebels squad, throughout the years, you've been able to bred players from club through to being able to play for the Rebels, and they've gone into high honours with Australian rugby. You know, last year we look at the Wallaby season, and Burn City was really put on the map. We get the sense as outsiders looking in that community is something that's really important to the team and to your fans. Could you shed a little bit of light around that?
Yeah, obviously we've been lucky enough to bring some guys through who are Melbourne born and bred, and they've represented the state and their families and their cultures really well. Robbie's a great example. Last year was a huge year for him, and he really represented the group well and represented himself well. But also, I think outside of that, we've got a lot of guys who are not necessarily from Melbourne, but they've really embraced this as their home, and they represent the people of Melbourne, and they're proud to do that. There's also a lot of people who support the club and invest a lot of time and resources here that we're extremely grateful to, and they contribute day to day so much to us. And so every time we put on the jersey, we're representing them and what they bring to the club.
That's really beautiful. And lastly, Kevin, Super Round is heading down in round 10. How excited are you to be able to be the city that hosts over 12 teams with all the fans coming through? I'm sure that's something that you are looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be awesome. You know, spending a lot of time away from Melbourne over the last 2.5 years, to be back in Amy Park and to have all the teams come to Melbourne is very special. So we're just very grateful for all the people who put that together. We know we'll put on a good show, but it's going to be really cool for everyone to get there and watch all the different teams compete. So I think it's over Easter weekend as well, so there'll be a lot going on. So we're really, really grateful for that, and it's going to be awesome.
It'll be a true showcase of rugby. Well, thank you, Michael and Kevin, for your time. We wish you all the best for the upcoming season.
Thanks.
We'll now head across to the Western Force.
The Western Force coach is Tim Sampson, and their new captain is Fletty Kotu. Fletty, I'm going to start with you. Congratulations, mate. I mean, what an honour to captain the Western Force. What does it mean to you?
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, it's definitely something I wasn't expecting and came from left field. So extremely honoured to be named captain, and yeah, hopefully I can do my family and my teammates, the club and the state proud.
Tim, why was he the perfect choice?
I think when you appoint a captain or look at options for your captaincy, they're guys that you know are going to live to what's important to the club, and that's your values and your pillars. And it's a great story with Fletty. It started coming to the club in 2018 when the Force restarted, if you like. And as we know, he made his Wallaby debut last year and then captain this year. And gee whiz, he's put his foot down straight away, Nick, because we're in Fletty's room up here. I think we're on level 75, and I'm getting a bit crook. We're up that high.
I hope it's tidy. Hey, Tim, just quickly to start with, it's been a tough start already. You haven't even got on the park yet, and again having to relocate. What challenges does that represent? Just that simple fact of having to be away from home.
Yeah, look, mate, it is a challenge, but we embrace it, Nick. It's important that we stay focused on the job at hand. And the challenging thing when we're back in Perth was just packing up pretty quickly and leaving loved ones behind. But with the players are in a great headspace, mate. A lot of the guys have been through it before, so we know what's coming. And we've got a really good group, players and staff, and we stay on the front foot and stay focused.
Fletty, obviously, when you talk about that really good group of players and staff, there's some young guys in there, but there's also some older guys, and in particular, Isaac Rodder, him coming into the setup. How important is that, just that experience, and even for you to be able to lean on his experience?
Yeah, definitely. Having Big Rod's back, massive addition to our group. He's a real general at line-out time and a real physical presence in the middle of the field. He's done it all in the game so far, and we'll be drawing on every bit of experience throughout this year.
Felitti, I know that you've also worked hard throughout the pre-season, as all the teams have done. Who's really impressed you? Who should we be keeping an eye out for to make a name for the Force this year?
I think we've got so many exciting young lads coming through. A few WA locals like Ollie Callan, Jackson Pugh, our little general in the middle, Rajan Pasitoa, we picked up from the Brumbies. He'll be looking to have a red-hot crack this year. So that's just to name a few. But, yeah, we're gifted for how much talent we've got on offer, and hopefully we can, provide the best environment for them to grow.
And that talent can help you build on your inaugural finals appearance last year. Tim, off the back of that, what does success look like this year? As far as a coach goes, I guess the only way is up.
Yeah, absolutely. We were pretty chuffed with how things went last year, certainly in AU, and created a little bit of history there by making the finals for the first time, and then bouncing into the TT competition. I think for most games, we're in it for long periods, but success, I think we've got to be better than what we were the year before, and if that means making a final, it does mean making a final. So that's where our heads are at and what we're aiming to achieve, and we're in good stead at the moment.
I know that so many people in Australian rugby love seeing the Western Force enjoy a degree of success, and let's hope you can do exactly that in 2022. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks very much.
Good stuff. So those guys are back on the field and looking to go up the ladder in 2022, but obviously a tough start first up to have to go away from home and manage that as well as perform on the field. As we wrap up, Sera, who is, I don't know if you can take your Waratahs cap off here, but who do you expect to be the big movers of the Australian teams this year?
Well, I think you kind of took my answer. I think the New South Wales Waratahs are going to be a force to be reckoned with. Last year they had a far from ideal season, but we heard Michael Hooper is returning to the fold. They've got some big names coming back, and their theme is to reset. So, kind of being at Daceyville, being in and around the camp, I know that they have a strong sense of urgency to be able to deliver for their fans this season.
Indeed, and no matter where you are watching around Australia or indeed around the world, we hope that you can be a part or choose to be a part of Harvey Norman Super Rugby Pacific. It is a whole new era of rugby in Australia, and it kicks off on Friday week.
Yes, so make sure you get out to your local club, support the rugby, and also remember that you can catch all of the action live, ad-free and on-demand with Stan Sport.
Indeed, on Stan, and of course every Saturday night on 9 as well, free to air. Thanks for your company today. I'm McArdle, Sera Naiqama. Enjoy the season.
The countdown's over.
For the first time ever,
And there's the first try.
Australia, New Zealand and the Pacific Islands compete in the Super Rugby Pacific competition.
Looking real good.
The only place to watch every match.
Unbelievable.
Ad-free, live and on demand.
The rampaging Tony Allen Super
Rugby Pacific kicks off February 18 on the home of rugby, Stan Sport.